working? Can you hear me?
Yes, Adam.
I've been informed this meeting is being recorded.
It is being recorded. We're not wasting any time. We're not wasting any juice.
We're all busy businessmen with lots going on in our lives.
It's true. And because you have deigned to call in rather than download the software that is all the rage, you can see neither my clever background nor my t-shirt. And so
I'm crying. I'm crying over here. I'm missing out so much.
But you can see it when you watch the video on YouTube.
The video
that gives me something to look forward to when I rewatch the entire 3-hour recording.
Well, first of all, just want to say, everyone who's listening, this is Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan with special guest Adam.
I want to say that I took personal offense when you started calling the Benny and whatever the fuck episode 1 of Mike's Movie Podcast. That's some revisionist history going on there.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I actually changed the titles of the podcasts on YouTube, and I arbitrarily selected the number 18 to begin, but I didn't actually count.
No, I didn't look at the title. I'm talking about when Mike, I believe you or Mike says, like, this is the first episode or episode 1. And I was like, what the fuck?
Well,
was it all a dream? Have I been hallucinating the, like, past 5 years of Mike's Movie Podcast?
So
how many years has it been? Do you guys remember?
Since we've had you on?
I think the first Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan, that was Jack and Jill. I believe that would have been March of 2015. So yes, it would have been over 5 years ago when we started it.
And I believe, Adam, we first had you on in the late fall of that same year to do the 70s movies podcast.
Yeah, that sounds right. What a journey it's been.
What a journey.
We're all so much older and wiser now.
And fatter in my case. But
I think I'm fatter too.
Well,
Can I be fat?
Yeah, I don't know how fat you are because I can't see you. Because you won't download Zoom. You don't realize.
You know, I did a video chat with Matt Goins, who is, you know, a cybersecurity expert, and he uses something called Jitsi, which requires no software, has been around for like 20 years. You just like create a name for the room and anyone can join. Way easier, way better, totally free, open source. But somehow Zoom is better because it costs money. And
I never said Zoom was better. The issue is the recording. Can you record with that? So I have
I don't know because I don't care. I do this to talk to you guys. It's relevant to me whether it's recorded.
Anybody who works for an organization is using Zoom now. So it's like saying I don't want to have Zoom because of security concerns. It's like saying I don't want to have Gmail for security concerns. So.
Well, it'd be like saying you don't have Gmail for security reasons if Gmail had started like 6 months ago and was the most popular software on the internet.
I've had to use it for years for my teaching online. Anyway, boring details that have nothing to do with the task at hand, which is a glorious one.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
Yes. And because this is my podcast, I'm going to say what it is that we are doing.
Damn right.
But first, I am going to give a overview of how we got to this exact podcast with this exact topic. So, we are currently in global quarantine due to COVID-19 coronavirus.
Well, you and I.
Right? Yeah, we are in that one. And anyway, so what Evan and I decided to do was revive the podcast and start by watching old classic movies that are very long, that have overtures, that have intermissions, stuff that we wouldn't normally watch, but because we don't have, you know, the NBA, we don't have the Bucks marching the NBA finals to watch, we have all this extra time. So we decided to watch all of these movies. Started with Larry, moved on to Benny, then we watched Doc, and then the most recent one was Bridge on the River Kwai. When we were doing the podcast last week, what I was commenting was how on Bridge on the River Kwai, how there's so much visually happening where there are reactions from certain actors to other actors. And, in the foreground, you might have something, and then in the background, you might have some other activity. So each frame just has a lot going on visually, which I remarked was similar to the Naked Gun movies, which had a lot of reactions, have a lot of jokes in the foreground, have a lot of jokes in the background. So we decided for this podcast to watch the first Naked Gun movie that was required. 2.5 and 33 1/3 were extra credit if you were so inclined, but we decided all three of us to watch the Naked Gun movie. And I want to comment right off the bat that there is a scene that, of course, references Benny, specifically the chariot scene in the Naked Gun, when there is the hypnotized doctor who is escaping, and then Leslie Nielsen is in the car with the driving student. And as they are racing, there are some spurs, or what you want to call it, on the car of the doctor, which, of course, is a reference to the spurs that are on the chariot of Masala, which he uses to destroy the chariots of his competitors. So everything's coming around all in full circle here, and there's some symmetry to it, which I really like.
So Go ahead. Okay, Adam.
There's more references to those movies in 33 1/3. Did either of you guys rewatch 33 1/3?
No, not yet. So I have to correct 2 errors in Mike's opening monologue here. So the first one was a small error. I don't think we ever the original idea with watching the epics with intermissions was not necessarily podcast related. But Mike and I had an email exchange in which we were trying to think of ways to nurture our friendship and make use of some of the extra time that we would be having on our hands. And I think the first 2 ideas we discussed were a potential War and Peace book club to follow up our Moby Dick book club we did a few years back, in which Mike read the book and I did not. And then we did a podcast on the movie version of Moby Dick with Patrick Stewart. But then we talked about just making ourselves watch what we thought would be these super boring, dry, painful old movies, which turned out to be really good. And we'd have these discussions, and we decided to just have revive the podcast and use that as sort of like an opening, what's the word? Salvo to get Adam back engaged.
Okay. Yes, you are. Yeah,
I love historical epics. That's the best bait for me, is just historical epics. I'm like a cat to tuna.
Yeah, but Evan, I want to say you corrected this one. I will say that I like a newspaper issuing a retraction. I regret the error. You are correct. In terms of movies that I watched, So yesterday I watched the original Naked Gun. I did not rewatch 2.5 or 33 1/3. I did, however, watch Airplane for the first time yesterday as well.
For the first time? Are you
fucking
kidding me?
Christ.
Well, I would like to personally do separate podcasts for the other 2 Naked Guns and Airplane. That's my vote. Because I just think
they're all great.
Right.
I actually, as a kid, I did not have the experience you guys had with the Naked Gun movies. I, of course, saw all 3 Naked Gun movies at slumber parties or whatever, but I obsessively saw Airplane, Airplane 2, and Top Secret way more than the Naked Gun movies as a kid. So those are way more deeply ingrained in my personal memory and history than the Naked Gun one. So it was a real treat for me to go back, because it had been much longer and much fewer times to watch these movies. And I watched them with Shane, who of course had them memorized and the DVD commentaries memorized.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I caught wind of that yesterday evening. I was very happy to see that you 2 were going to be watching Naked Gun together. And I warned. Yeah,
we did 1 and 2 together last night, and then I did 33 1/3 this morning.
Okay. Well, so
I want to say, I know we're going to keep it separate, but I want to say that just so you know, the joke specific to what you guys are doing in 33 1/3, which you may remember from previous viewing, is they're at the Oscars, and the first thing that's happening when they go to the Oscars is some generic made-up elderly actors getting a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they're showing the other movies, the movies that made him famous in the 50s and 60s. And the first one is just Sandals and Loincloths, and the second one is something just like The Sweaty Boatman, and then the third one is The Big Shiny Spear. And the pictures are very clearly meant to be exactly the kind of movies you guys have been talking about.
Yeah, and that connection, well, I certainly did not make that connection, which is one of the reasons why I think we should do a separate, at least for 33 and a third. Like I said last week, Mike, when we were talking about this, I recently did a revival of the trilogy over the last couple of months. I think I may have fell asleep during the last half of 33 and a third, but I remember thinking that, holy shit, the first one is like basically the funniest movie of all time. And
Yeah.
the second one pales in comparison, though has its moments, which we could talk more about. But this is a special movie to me. I didn't realize until I was like poking around for some of my favorite scenes this morning that the whole movie is based on a television series.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I've never seen it, but I did know that. I've seen clips from it because, you know, it was a failed show. I don't think all the episodes even aired. And then, of course, they recycled some of the jokes because they were great jokes.
Right. Yeah, there's like 6 episodes of the show. It came out in like 1982. And they did this movie. And as I shared on the last podcast, it's worth repeating. Like, this is one of my earliest memories is of watching this movie because the laughter was so like bone rattling. It was like the hardest I'd ever laughed at that. I must have been 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And was just so happy that my dad let me watch this movie. He was notorious for allowing us to watch things before our time. And this was the first sort of eruption I can really recall. And I think it's the best comedy movie ever made because it's the most, every nook and cranny is packed with some stupid bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain scenes that even now, like I just rewatched one this morning and I just fucking lost, you know, like the, for me, it's the scene, I'm just going to jump in right into it here, but the scene where he's, you know, at the press conference with the secretary and he gives his sort of spiel about how he's going to protect the queen and the police squad was going to do their duty. And they set it up by giving him the better mic, and then he takes that mic into the bathroom. The whole room hears him taking this really long, dramatic pee with several loud farts incorporated. I can't imagine a better. That's just perfect for me. That's all you need to make me happy, you know. And I also want to say, this is a topic we can chew on if you want, but it became clear to me that a lot of the origins of the Mike/Fike/coup mythology are rooted in Naked Gun. Just this sort of like constant hapless, you know, meandering slapstick idea that just everything goes wrong. I know that had a big part to play.
No, well, I have to say, I mean, Evan and I, an area where we had a very similar upbringing, very specific, was these Naked Gun movies, where I had them on VHS tape, and I would just like watch them over and over and over again. I want to say that there is some stuff which supplemented these movies. So I don't know if you are familiar with the children's book, The Stupids, which of course was later made into a movie with Tom Arnold and whatnot. But you weren't allowed to read those. But that was like kind of like both the Naked Gun and the Stupids of just throwing as many corny jokes out there as possible was definitely very, very influential for me. But yeah, first two of those movies I watched them over and over and over again. So 33 and a third, though I've seen it multiple times, I haven't seen that in a while, so it's not quite as ingrained in my brain as the first two.
Yeah.
But especially the first one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's just like, I don't know that I could get sick of this first Naked Gun movie.
Yeah.
Like this whole thing has revived my passion for it, and I might watch it tonight. It's just too good. It's something I want to have on in the background. I love O.J. Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
He's perfect for the role. Doesn't do much in the first Naked Gun, of course, but what he does do is just gorgeous.
Well, the first scene with him on the boat is I just think that's just A plus. I don't know more to be said about it.
It's an A plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but there are some. But I have to say, and I have one of my notes on this, and then I put on here my note. This is the George Carlin of movies, and here's my comparison with that. My comparison of the George Carlin of movies is, of course, George Carlin. He was famously arrested in Milwaukee for doing his 7 words you can't say on TV. So obviously he had a lot of filthy jokes, blue jokes as they call it in the business. But he also has his bit about comparing baseball to football, which is totally G-rated that you can show to anybody. And I think in this movie you have scenes when they're on the dock with the worker and he's like, "Hey, give me 20," or it's when they're exchanging $20 bills, which is, again, that's fun for the whole family. But then, of course, you have some other scenes which, get some more adult themes as well. So the comparison. What?
There are 3 of the tamest, most PG comedies, which is why we all watched them as kids. I don't know what you think the blue comedy is.
Well, the blue comedy is, so this gets to another note of what the blue comedy is the scene when he is at Ludwig's condo and he burns it down, and then he's escaping, and then they have the statues which have the concrete dildos on them. That would be one of them.
Yeah, that theoretically involves a phallus, but it's still pretty, aimed at children.
Yeah,
I just want to quickly. I would disagree that it's aimed at children. And I do think that these movies are probably it's safe to say they would not have gotten a PG rating.
Well, this was PG-13.
Oh, was Naked Gun PG-13?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then there you go. I don't feel like it's aimed at children at all. This to me strikes me as the epitome of the kind of movie my mom was terrified I was going to watch. And my dad was keen to let me watch. That warped my mind. And like I said, that whole Nordberg scene. Nordberg is Mike, you are Nordberg. That that connection is so clear to me. And I know my brother, who had more to do with the development of the cool Mike character than even I did, would agree. It's just spot on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's a good comparison, because I feel in the movie the Nordberg character has a certain which is weird to say with O.J. Simpson, but it's a certain innocence to that character.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a pure character.
Sure. Yeah.
But
he just gets fucked.
Yeah.
Oh man, Adam, did you? So you watched 1 and 2 with Shane last night. Did you guys what were your moments or observations?
Shane also, specifically, he was, as soon as we started it, he was very excited about the scene where he falls out of the boathouse, and that really, he was already completely destroyed by that, because it is a perfect scene. They really did not leave. And then we were talking about how every joke, they do every version of the joke. It's fourth dimensional, every possible world happening simultaneously of the joke. Because any one of the things that happens to him would be funny. And they do every single possible one in a row so that it's just relentless.
Yeah, going from he gets wet paint on his hand to stepping on a bear trap.
my personal favorite nugget in that scene is when he's trying to open the door and he kicks through the door. And just the way that all the criminals are taking their time loading their guns, just we have all this time.
I think what's funny about that scene too is that he goes in there and he's freeze, police, and then all the guys have their guns, but then there's the one guy who drops his gun and surrenders.
Yeah.
And that would be me.
Right.
I'm still perplexed, and I'm curious to hear you guys talk more about what it was about these movies that your parents wouldn't want you to see, or that was in some way transgressive to you guys. Because to me, these are some of the purest, most who could possibly object to the sheer perfection of, because it's like Charlie Chaplin shit,
Yeah.
Who is going to object to this?
Well, I'll give a personal response to this. I'm actually gonna give a little bit of a longer answer. So my mom was a big fan of these movies, so she loved them and she was okay with me watching them. And actually, you know, when we would like go to Packer games later on, whenever there was the national anthem, like she would always, you know, like sing the Enrico Palazzo version of the national anthem of those games. But I remember when we were watching the movies, in the early scene when they have the police car with the flashing light on top, that like whenever there was the scene when they were going into the women's locker room, she was like put her hands over my eyes and like try to shield me from that. So that would be like
I
one
don't even
example.
think there's any nudity in that scene, is there?
Just bras and underwear. It's
Yeah.
it's enough to do the trick. Though.
This is what I'm
Especially
saying.
in
You're talking
quarantine
about it
times.
like it's like some edgy, naughty thing, and it's like, okay, so
No.
women in bathing suits.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. To clarify, from my situation was that, like I said, this was like the perfect movie that my mom wouldn't want me to see. I don't know if she ever expressed any specific issues with Naked Gun. I don't think she knew that we were watching it, but her thing was like, you can watch whatever like gory, gross horror movies you want, but like if it's stuff that's like setting you back mentally, where it's just like it's pure slapstick, like stupid pee pee poo poo, that wasn't her cup of tea. And
well, according to you, these movies aren't for kids, so that's not relevant to these movies either.
I don't think they are for kids.
So they're juvenile, pee-pee, poo-poo, and not for kids.
Well, I didn't say juvenile.
Well, and I'll say, like, when I was like, I just remembering my mindset when I was watching the movies, like the scene when they're in the full body condoms.
Yeah.
And like, I had no idea what was going on when I saw that movie, or like the joke of like, you know, when she's like, Jane's like, oh, I had a great time, and Drebin respond like, you're not just saying that because we exchanged bodily fluids. Like, those are jokes that, you know, a 9-year-old's not going to get and like understand what that means.
Well, that was the magic of the movie, is that like, even though I didn't get most of the jokes, it's just still funny.
Yeah.
Like Leslie Nielsen could do anything and it would be funny. You know,
I was thinking a lot about Leslie Nielsen and Jim Varney and how the Ernest movies are the other 90s slapstick masterpieces.
Yeah, definitely. Ernest and Naked Gun go in the same. So Ernest is more for.
They should have been together. There should have been a crossover. Jim Varney should have been like the villain in Naked Gun 4.
Yeah, I don't think Naked Gun is quite that like animated. You know, the Ernest.
Know.
I mean, I definitely see your point. I think they are cut from the same cloth, but Naked Gun is aimed. Adults would go see Naked Gun just like they'd go see Wayne's World, who wouldn't ever touch an Ernest movie, because an Ernest movie is more like a cartoon.
I mean, I think you're right, but I think that's, you know, optics and marketing more than substance based.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Actually, yeah, I think I agree with that, because as we have, you know, ingested these movies and savored them, and I think it's like what we're settling on here is that they satisfy the same cravings, like the same exact, you know, cravings. I also think the Ernest movies are just a little bit more like adventure, like they're more like they go out on a limb a little bit more. It's just, they're not as contained. Naked Gun is like a very crisp, tight package. You know exactly what you're getting. Ernest is zanier and wackier.
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest. I do prefer the Ernest movies for those very reasons.
Yeah, and I think, well, and if we're going to get really, you know, nuanced about it, I think it probably depends on which Ernest you're talking about, right? I mean, like,
we'll stick with the classics.
Okay, well, then
Theatrical
the classics. Yeah. Ernest Goes to Jail and Naked Gun should be a double feature. I mean, like, that's a perfect Friday night right there.
But the thing is, he goes to jail in 33 1/3, so it should be 33 1/3 and goes
that's
to jail.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Yeah, okay, so maybe you do Naked Gun. If I was going to do, like, okay, the weekend is Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, I would do Thursday night, Naked Gun 1, Ernest, what would I do? I'd probably do Ernest Goes to Camp. No, Naked Gun
The
1.
beginning. They're both the beginning.
Right. Naked Gun 1, Ernest Goes to Camp. Naked Gun 2 on Friday night, Ernest Slam Dunk. And Naked Gun 3 and Ernest Goes to Jail on Saturday night.
Well, then you do Scared Stupid and Dracula Dead and Loving It and really mix it up.
Or Surf Ninjas.
Surf Ninjas, I feel like Surf Ninjas is for like what are the like Goes to Africa or something really
Surf
out
Ninjas
there.
and Goes to Africa, definitely. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So this is the new thing. We're going to be pairing Leslie Nielsen movies with Ernest.
They should have done that same style. There should have been like Leslie Nielsen in the Army. Leslie Nielsen is a chef. Yeah. Leslie Nielsen is a construction worker.
You know what though? I think that Leslie Nielsen though, after the Naked Gun era, I think that effectively happened when you look at movie like Spy Hard and Wrongfully Accused.
Oh gosh, I forgot.
I don't know, man. I just rewatched Mr. Magoo, and besides the fact that it doesn't need to be a Mr. Magoo movie and his Mr. Magoo impression is completely superfluous, that movie is still fucking great. That could have been Naked Gun 4 if they didn't bizarrely want to make it a Mr. Magoo movie. The jokes are the same as a Naked Gun movie. If they had just called it that and taken out the cartoon in the opening credits, you would be like, oh, cool, Naked Gun 4, pretty good.
Well, in my opinion, the true Naked Gun 4 is the Leslie Nielsen Bad Golf Made Easier instructional video.
There's a whole trilogy.
Yeah.
You got to watch all three.
Wait, if the Bad Golf Made Easier, or is that like other self-help? Because I am only familiar with one Bad Golf Made Easier.
There's Bad Golf Made Easier, there's Bad Golf My Way, and what is the third one? There's three of them. Hold on, man. I'll go get them off the shelf.
Okay, well, this is revolutionary information that we're giving because I'm only familiar with the one, which of course I loved.
I was gonna say, like, this podcast already has like so much juice to it for people. I mean, like, I feel like anybody listening to this should be extremely grateful and watch all these movies.
Yeah. Hey, so Adam, are you still there?
He's going to the bathroom. You know, we're getting close to the 35-minute mark, which means I think we should wrap this up.
Yeah, I think we've said all that needs to be said.
You know, because we like to we like to keep these podcasts short and sweet. And, Adam can record an addendum.
We are the Ernest Hemingway of podcasts. Short and sweet.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway. And Adam is like the Dickens of podcasts. And,
I was going to say Victor Hugo.
Okay. Well, agree to disagree.
Yeah.
So I was really, I selected my background for Adam's sake, and I was hoping that it would generate some content, but since he's on the phone, it's not.
Well, I will say,
okay.
I think
there's Bad Golf Made Easier, Bad Golf My Way, and Leslie Nielsen's Stupid Little Golf Video. There's three of them.
Okay. I bet those are okay. So I have my instructions. Also, I know that we're here to talk about the Naked Gun movies. But here, the only Ernest movie that I can recall ever actually sitting down and watching from start to finish is Ernest Saves Christmas. I think the other ones I've seen pieces of them, but
Ernest of all the theatrical Ernest movies.
Yeah, I think it was on heavy rotation on ABC when I was growing up. I've seen like parts of them, but I have not devoted myself to the Ernest filmography as you have, and that is just
that's so crazy that you've never seen Airplane, you've never seen Ernest. You're at a level of like pop culture blind space that you could be Nick Johnson's girlfriend.
Calling her out, huh? Right on the podcast.
There's a lot of listen. Here's the thing, though.
That's a historical reference in general.
Listen, if you're a Packer backer like myself, though, you just don't have as much time to watch everything.
I mean, Packers is life, man. Yeah. I couldn't name one player other than Aaron Rodgers on the Packers right now.
Yeah.
Shane also had to alert me to the sports cameo in Naked Gun. Reggie Wilson, is that right?
Oh, it was Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson, who of course was later in basketball.
See, Mr.
Also a Zucker movie.
Yeah, another Zucker movie, which of course I also made the connection too with Airplane that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was also in, Airplane and basketball as well.
And Ernest Slam Dunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, this is true. Speaking of that, so one scene of this movie that I've always found to be particularly satisfying is when he is the home plate umpire and he's cleaning off the plate and he uses the dustbuster. I always found that to be satisfying, the way that it cleans off the plate, and I didn't find the vacuum cleaner to be as satisfying. I think that he should have stuck with the dustbuster.
I know we're supposed to stick to the first one, but they bring that back in 3 when he's tunneling out of jail and they have to hide the dirt, and he hides the dirt by shaking it out on the home plate of the baseball diamond in the prison. And the joke is that they dig way too far and there's just this massive mound of dirt that the home plate is on top of, and everyone still just plays as if it's a normal baseball diamond.
Yeah. No, that's good. Good stuff there. I think that scene that I enjoyed, the baseball scene, the baseball follies. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
I specifically said to Shane, this sports stuff is for Mike. This is why they did this for Mike specifically.
But I think the scene that just gets me every time is when they're trying to avoid getting the 3rd out to avoid the 7th inning stretch, and there's the pop-up, and Leslie Nielsen's, he's trying to interfere with the catcher, and then the catcher pushes him away, so he grabs the balls from his bag and throws them all up in the air at the same time.
Yeah, that is really good.
And then the catcher blocks the plate and the runner's out by 5 feet and he calls him safe. It's just comedy gold. I love it.
Classic comedy, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Couple of laughs, some popcorn.
Okay. Well, but what's your favorite scene, favorite joke in the movie? What sticks with you? Or what's made the biggest impression?
2 different questions.
Okay, well, what's your favorite joke? We'll start with that one.
Well, I already said my favorite joke is the peeing in the microphone.
The peeing in the microphone.
A close second would be where he just goes into the guy Ludwig's office and meets with him and fucks up his fish and his pen and all that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Evan's second one is mine, so I'll co-sign that one.
That's just a really great sequence in general. Just the way that the guy sets it up, he's just very obviously talking about all of his, luxury items that he's collected, and they're priceless and with that inestimable value. He quickly breaks the unbreakable pen and uses it to kill the $20,000 fish. I love it. That kind of stuff is...
Oh, actually, wait. Okay, another joke that really sticks with me, and they bring it back in 2, is I think it's in the hospital scene. I don't remember what the setup is, but there's a scene when someone just throws a pillow at him.
Yes.
And he just holds it to his face like he's attacking him.
That is a really good one, too. It's tough, man. It's tough to pick. But the one that's most memorable for me... Actually, Mike, you already talked about it. And it's because of the whole childhood formative, not understanding the sex jokes, but the full body condom thing, as a 6 or 5-year-old, I can't remember, seeing that scene, I knew it had something to do with sex and that I wasn't going to get a true answer from my dad about what it meant. And that the image really stuck with me. It wasn't really funny, but, that was I think to my brain, that's what sex was when I was 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was a joke. I just thought
Shane also had some stories about asking his dad for clarification in the movie, but it was I think it's in 2 when they go in the sex shop and George Kennedy picks up a chainsaw with a dildo on the end of it, and Shane was yeah, and ask my dad what that was about.
Yeah. Of course. Well, did his dad tell him?
I don't think so. I forget what he said his dad's response was, but it was not well, son, a dildo is a phallic object used in lieu of a penis.
Right. Good old Shane. What's he doing now? Does he want to be on the podcast?
I tried to get him to come surprise join on this, but he is on a Zoom call for his mother's birthday, some family member's birthday, Zoom call.
Okay. All right. Well, we have our core group of loyal listeners. And, Adam, I know you bless your heart. You like to have these things go long. I like to keep them crisp. And one of the reasons for that is because I know then that my brothers will actually listen to them. And they're the only.
That's our crucial distinction is I'm doing this because I enjoy hanging out with you guys.
No, I know.
performative theater element of
I
it.
get that. I know. I'm of two minds. You know, like I appreciate that as well. But I also like having the little, you know, nugget. What's the longest one of these we ever did?
The 70s is pretty long.
Yeah, that might have been close to 2 hours. I don't think we've ever gone past 2 hours.
I don't think we
But
have either.
isn't our entire established listener base like unemployed and doing nothing right now? What do they got? What are they so busy they can't listen to like an hour and a half podcast?
So Nicholas, my brothers and I we all have the same little bug in us that we don't get bored and we keep busy. Like we're all doing a million things. I don't know how that works, but like if you call those guys any time or me, like we have a whole plan for every day.
No,
like,
you're like Tim Allen. You know, you have like a TV show you're working on, you have a movie, you have your stand-up that you're working on.
It's like
you have all sorts of business.
I'm really curious, Evan, for you specifically, what is that plan? You know, let's say for this weekend, what's on the list? What's on the docket?
Well, like, we have a big one tomorrow.
Yeah, right. So like, I mean, I can go through the whole weekend with you. I mean,
that's what I want.
Okay, so for today, I started off, I had to reorganize my t-shirt collection. I cleaned out the shed. I sorted through my old Christmas ornaments that I'm going to take to my storage unit and throw out the ones that were broken.
What's the volume? What volume are we talking for Christmas ornaments?
Okay, you remember the Apple eMac computer?
Of course.
Okay. My mom had one of those, and we had like, it come in a giant cube box. Huge. I had that thing plus another couple of smaller like book boxes full of ornaments, and I needed to clear them out and get them out of my shed because I'm trying to clear out space in my shed to make it into a little like workshop. I don't know.
Airbnb.
I have a list. I have like several index cards filled with things that I need to accomplish before they end quarantine, because the secret is that I actually love this. Like, I mean, I don't love it, you know, I'm not trying to minimize how bad it is for certain people, but it has not been bad for me personally at all. All it's done for me is,
I mean, I don't think you have to hurry. When do you think quarantine is going to be, quote, over?
I'm worried they're going to start opening shit up in June, July, and you know, whatever. I don't think I'm going to be back on campus in the fall, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, if anything reasonable, if we're taking things seriously, I would think it's going to be like a year. That's why it's absurd to me that anyone is like, oh.
Yeah, I'm predicting early 2021.
So I think you got some time.
I do, but I just have a lot to do. You know, one of those things, Adam,
you have over a year of like stuff around your house to do.
So anyway, long story short, we all got a lot of hobbies. We got a lot of fucking little things we want to do. A lot of calls catch up on. This is the highlight. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is always the shit that I'm doing with like this right now, and whatever I'm doing with Mike with these movies, or like tomorrow we're doing an Ozzy thing. Those are always the most important priorities of the day.
What's the Ozzy thing?
Oh man, we can. Should we pitch it here, Mike?
Yeah, we can pitch it here. So this weekend is the NFL draft. The NFL draft, where all the 32 NFL teams, they get together and they pick the best available college players to join their teams. Now, the Packers made a bit of a controversial pick in getting Jordan Love, the quarterback out of Utah State. Controversial because you know, they have Aaron Rodgers, one of the all-time greats. You might argue he's the greatest quarterback in Packers history. He still has a few years left, and yet the Packers, they selected another quarterback with their first pick, usually one of the most important players in the draft. So there was a lot of controversy around that about what that means for the future of Aaron Rodgers and whether or not Jordan Love is a worthy successor. So it's got to get the sports talk into this podcast, because otherwise, you know, there's not going to be any sports talk. You know how me, like I said, I'm a big Packer backer. So how this ties back into Ozzy Osbourne is that what Evan and I are going to do is we're going to do a draft, but with the best Ozzy songs, and we are going to pick our top. We're going to take turns picking our top 15 favorite Ozzy songs. We're going to record that
solo only or Sabbath as well.
Solo only.
Solo only. No
Yeah.
Sabbath. That's a different draft.
Yeah.
So, but I assumed as much, but I wanted to be clear.
And it's going to be more like basketball, because we're going to draft. So, like, we're going to draft our starting lineup.
Yeah.
Then you draft your bench, and then we're going to talk about like what makes a starting Ozzy song versus a bench player.
Yeah, and
I think you're going to do every solo song.
They're all fair game.
Like, how deep is the bench? Is what I'm saying. Literally basketball sized.
Yeah, so literally basketball size. So we'll have like our starting 5, then we'll have like our second string, and then our third string.
Right. You get 15. You get 50. Everybody gets 50. We each get 15 songs.
Yeah, I think that with Ozzy, you have like what 100 some odd solo songs to choose from, but most of them will not be selected.
Right. It's we've already had some preliminary discussion, but over like what the obvious starting 5 that we'll be competing for, of course. Mm-hmm. So the question, Mike, is that do we include? I guess the answer is no, but I just want to mention the fact that, Mike, we have a song called Wizard Standing in the Trees that I originally wrote as a long-lost Ozzy track.
Yeah.
That will not be eligible to be drafted.
Mm-hmm.
But
I would like to take this time to mention, I don't know who invented it. I think Nick, but I sincerely believed, when the first time I heard Nick and/or Shane reference the Nine Inch Nails song, Ah Yes Piss, I really believed that was a Nine Inch Nails song I'd never heard. And it was a while before I figured out that was a fake thing that they made up. Because I totally believed Trent Reznor would have gone, ah, yes.
I don't know about that.
It's really good. That's basically it. The song is called Ah Yes Piss, and he just goes, ah, yes.
Well, I want to jump in real quick here and say that the thread of conversation has strayed far from the Naked Gun, which was
that is mission accomplished.
Yeah, mission accomplished.
So I think that what I'm just going to say here as a marker for future editing purposes is that if we want to, like, in terms of what gets actually put on YouTube and distributed, if like right now you want to have that, this is like the cutoff point, and then like the rest of it can be like director's cut, free flowing conversation.
It's fun. This is so funny. Like that. What you just said is, to me, like that. This is just like in like 2001, where you would get serious and look at Nick and say, "Now this is the time when we want to shut off the camera because nobody wants."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is that the thing is that we're like we're like recording right now. So like there is a connection between like how comfortable I am and like how much we're staying on topic, and like the more we stay on topic, the more comfortable I am having being recorded, versus like as we like flow into regular conversation, then I start getting uncomfortable. And the reason is because I'm just I'm extremely self-conscious when I'm on phone calls. So it's like, if I need to make sure that like nobody can possibly hear me, no matter what's being discussed, even if it's just like regular, like what my day was all about. So that's where the psychology comes in, is that if I know that I'm being recorded or being listened to, then I start becoming self-conscious. So I enjoy the hanging out part, but I'm just gonna mention that.
Well, I would say, Mike, it is Mike's movie podcast.
Yeah.
So,
and also, this is not a live stream. You could just include the first 10 minutes and be like, that was the episode.
Right.
Yeah.
So you always have that. You always have full creative control, Mike. I think that's an essential component of this.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have ceded the editing to you.
I know, but you tell.
And and some might argue that the editor is the true auteur.
I know, but basically you're still the editor because you tell me.
Okay, let's talk about our top 5 favorite editors.
No, I don't know any. But I wanted to say though too, Mike, not to, be obnoxious about it, but like the fact this Naked Gun podcast is a spinoff from a tangent from last week.
Mm-hmm.
That was off topic.
This is where the magic happens. Off topic.
We need those tangents.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's just
my
us
whole life
talking about a
tangent.
movie. Which, by the way, are we ever going to go? So, are we going to go back and do the rest of the epics? Adam sent out a list of like 30 epics.
Mm-hmm.
And with some,
there's a lot of them. And there's some good ones on that list.
So I want to continue with that one. I think that this again, I think quarantine's going to be going on for a year, and again, we don't have any sports to fill up our time. I'm speaking for myself, but Evan, you especially with the NBA, so we have some extra time with that. So I think watching the epics would be a good thing. I think that Adam, in our text thread, you pulled up some other movies, like what was like Baby Blood, or what were the?
I was literally just rattling off what I watched. I watched like 1 to 3 movies a night, and I was just rattling off what I was going to be watching regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what we should do for one of these podcasts is I want to like pick an old Packers game from like 1997 and then just like watch the recording of it, all of us, and then we have a podcast on that.
Not going to do it.
Why not?
Come on, let's do it, Adam.
Why not? I feel like Adam, that we extend flexibility. You know, I feel like I have flexibility and Adam has flexibility. I think that we need to demonstrate some flexibility about like watching some sports.
I don't care what you guys watch. I enjoy talking to you guys, but I don't have an urge to make you watch something you don't want to watch. That's why we always talk about what we want to watch. I have absolute zero interest in sports in general, much less old sports.
That's what would make it funny. I just think that would make for a really interesting conversation to have somebody.
I think it would be extremely boring, and I would have nothing to say, and then we would go off topic, and it would be completely pointless that I rewatch the game. Maybe you guys would have something substantive to discuss. I would.
Well, maybe there's a way that we can like we can start by watching an actual like bona fide sports movie like Miracle or something.
Oh,
and
man,
then I would do it.
That's a whole other string of casts we could do, sports, little boy sports movies from the 90s and or serious feel-good sports movies.
Yeah. I want to get back on topic for one thing, too, which is relevant to A, quarantine, and B, The Naked Gun, is that so first of all, I will say, I watched Naked Gun on Netflix, and Naked Gun 2.5 is on Netflix. And my preferred method of doing these podcasts is to drive to Scarecrow Video and rent them from there. Scarecrow, of course.
They're doing rental by mail.
They are. Yes, I did. So that's something. I want Scarecrow to exist, and if I can get on my soapbox for a second, if you want things to exist, you should pay for them. And I want Scarecrow to be around, so I will be doing that by mail video subscription. So that's how I'm going to watch 33 1/3 is getting it from them.
I'm gonna do what I did actually a couple of weeks ago when I watched 33 1/3. My go-to, not a lot of people know about this, but if I want to see a movie, the first place I check is Amazon.com. Okay, so you go to Amazon.com, and they've got a list of movies there. Sometimes you can, maybe you can rent the DVD, you buy the DVD, but you can also stream it. And I found out that I could stream Naked Gun and 33 1/3. I gave $3.99 to Jeff Bezos. Mm-hmm. And I get $40.
Wait, I watched 33 1/3 on Amazon, and it was just included with Prime for free. I paid nothing besides whoever's Prime account subscription I'm on, which I don't even know.
Then I take that back. Then I watched it for free because I have Prime, but I did pay Jeff Bezos to rent all of the epics that we watched over the last.
Yeah, no, so did I. So of course, I talk about like getting on my soapbox and like renting and whatnot. And of course, I participate with Amazon Prime as Netflix as much as anybody. But
my roommate.
I would also like to say that if we were gonna do the watch old Packers games thing, and this is not going to happen, but if it was going to happen, I would propose that it would be alternating. One episode we would watch an old Packers game of your choosing, and the next episode, the like reverse version would be like me picking a Criterion Collection European art house film you guys have to watch. I think that's the same length as the Packers game.
All right, I'm going to propose the following. And of all the things we've talked about, like 100 different podcast ideas, this is just me. I'm the least important member of this little outfit. But I'm just going to say, if I had my way, we would do 2 podcasts. The next 2 podcasts would be Mike picks and Adam picks. And Mike picks a Packers game, and Adam, you do what you just said. I would be thrilled.
Well, the reason I don't think it's going to happen is like I just won't watch the Packers game, and I'll just talk to you guys like I always want to do. No. And you guys understandably wouldn't watch, like last year at Marinbad or whatever I chose that I thought would be funny to make you watch.
That's the thing. You have to watch it, or else we won't watch your.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can get some of these.
There's
games.
no accountability. How are you going to force me to watch it?
Because
what we can do is. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll ask you some questions that you would only know if you actually watched it, and if you don't properly answer them, we'll just stop the podcast right there.
I will say that I'm
not going to watch it.
I can hear my brothers and co bristling at this idea. They're not going to want us to watch it.
Actually, you know what? Yeah, if you think they won't like it, let's do it.
They won't like it. So If
Okay,
that's
you
deal.
sold me.
I want to do it. I want to do both those two things. I want you to pick something.
Okay, so
that
Patrick gave a Mike's Choice, and then Alan Rob Grillet's last year in Bad.
Just pick the weirdest, shittiest thing. That's like
No, I'm not. I'm going to try and keep with the spirit of the epics and pick epics of the European art house genre.
Oh, God.
A different kind of epic that is seriously regarded and critically acclaimed.
I think,
Mike, for the Patrick game, does it have to be like, I mean, how long is this fucking thing? I mean, like, it's not like a full, no commercials, right?
Right. So I think in the
I would
ideal.
prefer if there were commercials.
So you have something to
So
watch.
you actually might
talk about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you might. Yeah, there actually is some stuff from the 90s commercials that you might like. I mean, one thing with these games is that they do have condensed versions of them, where they basically like cut out timeouts and stoppages and play. So you have like a 1 hour condensed version of a game, whereas the original broadcast time would be closer to 3. So there are ways where you can just like just watch a shortened version of the game, which could be done. I think though, for like actual podcast ideas, I think that what we should do is, I mean, we got to stick with what works. We got to stick with watching the epics, and then whatever just like naturally evolves through conversation is then like what the supplemental podcasts are. So I would say this is a supplemental podcast to the original project. So I think that's how I want to do it. Because
I always got to ask, who is the hypothetical audience that cares about the logistical dimensions of the podcast?
Me.
But you're not
creator.
The audience. You're the creator.
But I think the I was watching the Joe Rogan Experience. He had one of his Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age, and he was saying like, hey, I make music that I want to hear, and that's like me with podcasts.
Okay, that's fair. You're the
so
boss.
you had a bit of a reaction there. Not a fan of Joe Rogan, are you?
You know what? I'll say my favorite Joe Rogan is his guest episode of season 2 of MADtv, the greatest sketch comedy show of the 90s, which is my main source of entertainment that isn't movies these past couple months.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he peaked. He peaked with his guest thing on MADtv.
Yeah.
Who? What?
Joe Rogan?
What? Oh, Joe.
What?
MADtv. That's also a good show. Should rewatch that one.
Well,
it's tough. Only seasons 1 and 2 were ever commercially released, and seasons 1 and 2 don't have Will Sasso or what's her name who does all the Family Guy voices. None of the famous people are in seasons 1 and 2. Those are the only ones on DVD. The rest are only available, illicitly by pirating them. And YouTube, I discovered trying to upload my favorite skits, has a real hardline algorithm blocking MADtv content. Anything you had that's on YouTube, I don't know how they got it on there, because I had the most instantly blocked video I've ever uploaded to YouTube when I tried to upload a MADtv skit. So even though it's not available anywhere, seasons 3 through 9 or whatever, you can't upload it on YouTube. You can look up individual skits on Vimeo, but people don't put MADtv in the tags because it's weirdly policed.
That's interesting. I remember when it first came up, though. I remember liking MADtv more than Saturday Night Live.
I thought it was really stupid back in the 90s, but now I know that I'm stupid, and it's the show I should be watching.
I loved it. I also loved what's the Jim Carrey one where he's the only white guy?
In Living Color. That's the real crown jewel. But there's not as much of that. I think there's only 3-4 seasons of that. MADtv, there's 9 seasons.
Yeah. Back in those days, you were watching MADtv, In Living Color, Martin.
Almost Live.
Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Yeah, let's do an Almost Live podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could get Pat on the show, no problem. Episode 1.
Salute your shorts.
Yeah, that would be. We certainly could. We could probably. Well, I mean, Chris was doing the in-game entertainment for the Seattle Dragons of the XFL, and the XFL since
Chris is big league. We're not going to get Chris. We have to settle for Pat.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever be able to get John though.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably committed suicide by now. I love you, Pat Cashman. Come on the show.
Well, I hope you're going to send this now to these people you're talking about who I don't know.
Yeah, I'll send him a link. He's on Twitter.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, almost live. Maybe you've heard of Bill Nye, the Science Guy, or maybe you've heard of Joel McHale, or maybe you've heard of Bobby Nelson.
Bill Nye.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Naked Gun, huh? So, quite the movie, right?
Pretty
How
good.
about
Pretty
that?
good stuff.
Okay, so so I think this is the favorite part of the podcast, where what we do is we take like a movie, we analyze it, we think about how it made me feel.
One more, if we're wrapping up, can I have one more? I have one more thing I want to bring up. So, question one: are we actually ever going to do 2.5, 33 and a third podcasts, or can I bring up one thing from the sequels? Because I don't think we're ever actually going to do separate podcasts for those.
I think there's a good chance that we're going to do the podcast of those ones too, because I think just based on my sheer enjoyment. Go ahead.
If you think we're going to do separate ones, I'll wait and save my follow-up topic related to 33 and a third.
Well, I mean, I'm too intrigued now that I have to hear who you're going to say.
Well, the other night I was on a non-Zoom video chat with Matt, Alicia, and Brian Block, and I don't remember how it came up, but somehow 90s comedies where a woman is discovered to have a penis came up, and how that was a trend. And that happens with Anna Nicole Smith in 33 and a third, which I totally forgot about. And just like Ace Ventura, it immediately elicits vomiting because Leslie Nielsen pukes in the tuba. And then James Earl Jones is like, is that Phil Donahue puking in a tuba?
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up the topic of 90s comedies where a woman has a penis, because it's it was definitely a thing back then. Ace Ventura being the famous one, John Dahl's Last Seduction being a non-comedy one. What the fuck else? There was another one. Anyway, we were just talking about that as a thing in the 90s. And I wondered, like, were comedy writers in the 90s having that experience? Like, where it was, something was in the water with that. And I was curious of your shared thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, geez. Well, what was the at the time there was that movie, The Crying Game, right?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, that was earlier. That could have been the thing that started it off.
Mm-hmm. Where it was just the sheer parody of it.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know if Ace Ventura is supposed to be like referencing that. You know what I mean? And because like in the Naked Gun movies, it's very clear when they are doing an overt, specific film reference, and when it happens with Anna Nicole Smith, it does not. To me, it does not feel like it's supposed to be like a crying game. Oh yeah, wait, no, sorry. There's another thing I wanted to talk about. The opening scene of 33 and a third, they are doing, and they are making it very clear to you that they are doing a parody of the staircase shootout in Untouchables. Do you guys remember this?
No.
With the baby carriages?
Yes, I do too.
Oh,
yeah.
And I'm curious, because this is a movie podcast, and it's deliberate that it's supposed to be Untouchables, but do you two know what even more iconic classic film sequence Brian De Palma was referencing in that shootout with the baby carriage?
Was that like Battleship Potemkin?
The Godfather.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because I had the Odessa Steps sequence of Battleship Potemkin on my mind, because when Stuart Gordon died, I watched for the first time Space Truckers, which is a great movie. And Space Truckers also has a satirical Odessa Steps sequence on the fucking, spaceship when there's a fight at the bar. And at the time, I was like, this is the funniest Odessa Steps parody ever. And then I watched Naked Gun 33 and a third, and I was like, oh, absolutely not. The opening scene parodying Untouchables and Naked Gun 33 and a third is unequivocally the superior Odessa Steps satire sequence.
So this right here, now this is the content that we all want. This is
film criticism.
Yeah, this is here. The that scene for the stairway scene 33 and a third. That's one that I will watch the YouTube clips of that one too, which I think is also part of what makes
it masterful. When he picks up the quarter,
yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I also wanted to mention, since Stuart Gordon died, I didn't know Stuart Gordon got his start doing theater in Madison, just like the Zucker brothers and Jerry and Abrams did. All four of those people started doing theater in Madison as the start of their entertainment careers.
Mm-hmm.
Another 90s movie with reference to early trans comedy was Serial Mom. And
yes,
that's a memorable moment for me.
And that's another great movie I haven't seen in a long time.
I guess back in the 90s, it was considered like, you know, risque and, you know, embarrassing to have that orientation or that sort of curiosity. But I mean, I don't think I'm alone in saying that, you know, Anna Nicole Smith, for instance, an otherwise not very attractive woman, but given that sort of additional detail, is made much more alluring.
Uh-huh.
That's
How
all.
about Sean Young? Do you think Sean Young in Ace Ventura is unattractive except when you discover she has a penis at the end?
She's attractive both.
And yeah, also Anna Nicole Smith in Naked Gun 33 1/3 and Sean Young in Ace Ventura. I believe, I did not look this up, I have not done the research, I believe in both of those cases, those were the final, and in Anna Nicole Smith's case, possibly only theatrically released film that they were in.
Yeah, see, in my mind, Anna Nicole Smith was she was in a lot of other things. I mean, she was
in many shitty direct-to-video Action International Pictures movies. I don't know of another theatrically released movie she was in after 33 1/3.
What happened to Sean Young? She was in Blade Runner.
Yeah, she was a big star for a couple decades there.
For a while. Did she
I don't know her personally, so I can't say. You can read many rumors on the internet.
Oh, she was in the new Blade Runner.
Oh, was she? Who the fuck was she in the new Blade Runner?
Talking about the Ryan Gosling one?
Yeah, which I haven't seen.
You're sure she's in that one? I don't remember her in that one. I would believe that they would do a stunt cameo like that.
I'm just engaging in the classic Mike's Movie Podcast tradition of reading the Wikipedia page about movies that we
well, I want to go. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, keep on. I wanted to get back to Brian De Palma for a moment. For the first time also about a month ago, 2 months ago, I watched Snake Eyes. I had not seen that one before.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty good. It's a fun
time.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that one.
You should definitely look up on YouTube the original ending, which there's only a shitty videotape editor's copy of. Because in the original ending was like an insane tidal wave knocks a giant globe through the arena, and for whatever reason they changed it at the last minute. They didn't keep the insane ending, but you can still watch a shitty version of it on the internet.
Yeah, you know, what I say about the movie is previously, what was it in Blowout, when I guess the main female character dies in that one. That fact kept me guessing to the very end of Snake Eyes, which I guess has a happy ending, all things considered. But you never know what old Palma was going to do.
Oh, like you were not sure who was going to survive to the end of the movie, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, because the end of Snake Eyes is the zoom in on like the ring and the pillar, right? Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And that's great. That's because you're like, what the fuck am I looking at here? And then you're like, oh, I like endings like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, it's like maybe an homage to Wavelength. You know, think about it. Also in that scene at the very end, there was one of the construction workers was wearing a Green Bay Packers hat. Worth pointing out.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
No,
I enjoyed that. And the Snake Eyes too. You know, I mean, all people talk about like 1917 being this one continuous shot. I mean, Snake Eyes was ahead of the game there. To start the movie, because like the first like 8-9 minutes for one continuous shot. Which, come to think of it, I'm kind of surprised that movie didn't get more isn't more celebrated for that fact.
Snake Eyes or 1917?
No, Snake Eyes. You know, but.
I think it's because Brian De Palma had compulsively been one-upping himself his whole career, and people were sick of it by then. It was bizarre to me when, like, normal people acted like they cared about that in 1917, and I'm like, oh, you guys love all those De Palma long takes? Like, what the fuck you care now?
Mm.
The best one is Raising Cain in my book. Raising Cain is the most satirical because he keeps going out of his way to continue it in like the elevator and like in ways that don't make sense, and she's like going the wrong direction. I don't think there's a better De Palma long take tracking shot than Raising Cain, for me personally. That's some of his most madcap. Even though he did Bonfire of the Vanities, it was supposed to be a comedy. I think the comedy stuff in Raising Cain is the closest we get to De Palma and Naked Gun.
Mm-hmm. I've not seen Raising Cain in a while. Let me rephrase this. Too much time has passed since the last time I've seen Raising Cain for me to be totally familiar with what you're saying. But I do have a VHS copy, which you may, in fact, have given to me.
There's a beautiful Blu-ray.
Yeah. That
I'm sure Scarecrow has.
Do the mail that one. Order it so I can watch it. Keep Scarecrow going on. Adam, so this is for you, because anyway, I know what you like to do is you take the essence of movies and your assessment of them, and then just like boil it down to a quantitative rating. I know that's what you're all about. So for the Naked Gun, like, how would you, if you were to quantify it to like stars, if you want to like maybe get a little bit more creative and have like an A, B, C, like that type of scale, like how would you how do you assign that to Naked Gun?
My response is to bring up from a previous episode of the new wave of Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan, is that I am not a fan of instances when Evan leans into the on cinema at the cinema homage / derivative stuff, which I was thinking of most when Mike noticed that Evan kept giving 5 hamburgers to movies that he didn't like, which is 100% an on cinema at the cinema thing. That
however,
5 bags of popcorn.
However,
and Mike, as a sincere film critic, was like, this doesn't make sense because he doesn't understand that you're doing a homage / ripoff of on cinema.
Yeah. So you pull my car. So for the last 3 podcasts, I did do a mini homage to that. However, they did an homage to me, because we created the cheeseburger system before that show even came out.
I can't. I'm assuming you're joking, because that show has been on the air for like over a decade, and it was a podcast before it was a TV show. Shane was listening to that podcast when we were in college. To give you context for how not ahead of that show
2016.
you are.
2016.
I'm going to say, too, for On Cinema at the cinema, after thinking about it, I haven't seen any of that. I'm not sure if I would like it, though, if the premise is like 2 people like, we don't know anything about movies, but we're talking about movies anyway. It's like,
a little too close to home.
It's not like that.
Well, yeah, but I do know about movies.
So did I.
I don't know. Maybe that's more, I don't know, that genre of like people like just being like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to talk anyway. I don't know, I generally don't find it to be all that entertaining, but I can watch. If I'm mischaracterizing it, then give it a watch.
It is a surprisingly subtle, character-based comedic work of
very fun.
Depth and continuity, unparalleled in the short-form internet comedy format.
It's good. It's very good. So I think
I trust Tim Heidecker. He does good stuff.
There was a point when I was a teenager and very enthusiastic about the guitar, where I woke up one day and noodled out some melody and ended up thinking that I wrote the song Summer Song by Joe Satriani.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, I had heard the song and it was embedded in my brain, and then I forgot about the fact that Joe Satriani had played it. I forgot I'd ever listened to it. And then I wrote it, but I didn't really write it. And I think I've had a similar lapse here with the cheeseburgers, because I, for some reason, was under the belief that On Cinema at the Cinema started occurring after Mike's Movie Podcast, which isn't true.
Oh, so you're telling me you're not joking?
I'm not joking now. Now I'm telling the truth. I am telling the truth. Up until right now, where I just Googled the date of the start of that show, which I thought
the show was like 2012, and the podcast was years before
that. Right. And so what I don't know for certain is whether I had seen On Cinema prior to Mike and I doing the cheeseburgers. My guess is, given the whole Joe Satriani thing, that yes, I had, and it got sort of implanted in me, but I forgot the accreditation to that show and those guys.
But are you talking about the original Mike's Movie Podcast, like again 2015 Jack and Jill? Are you saying that the original cheeseburger rating was what you took from
I'm saying
cinema to cinema?
I think I inadvertently may have ripped that off from their popcorn system.
Yeah, popcorn.
And it's because the reason I thought it was a meta joke referencing that show is there's a recurrent theme in that show where they pretend major studio movies have ripped off bits they did, which obviously they did not.
No.
I thought you were doing a meta reference by pretending that they ripped you off.
So my ego will just sort of absorb everything to its own. You know, I credit myself with things that other people have done naturally. That's just kind of I think that's a Tim Heidecker joke right there. What I just did.
But I think the cheeseburger rating menu, I mean, it's not particularly unique. I think that's the type of joke where the
joke to On Cinema would be to repetitively rate things in a way that doesn't make sense based on what your review is, because they just always give everything 5 bags of popcorn. But
I think that's a key distinction, though, because I think that our cheeseburger rating menus, I mean, at least in the original incarnation of this podcast, were in fact very thoughtful.
Yeah, we did. We put a lot of thought and discussion into exactly how many cheeseburgers we gave.
So I was only rebutting to Evan's claim that I thought was a joke that the Mike's Movie Podcast cheeseburgers predated the On Cinema 5 bags of popcorn.
In my head, it did, and I still think there's a good chance, especially given what Mike just said, that I didn't know about the show prior to the cheeseburger thing. But I don't know. I don't know. Like, with the Joe Satriani thing, it was clear because, once I listened to that song again, I was like, oh shit, I didn't actually write this song, which I'm glad because it sucks anyway. Joe Satriani. By the way, if you want a good laugh, Joe, he's active on Instagram, and Shane and I have a little Instagram thread going where Joe Satriani occasionally pops up, but there's some really good stuff, and there's Mike and I will get together, and before the coronavirus, Mike's actually was supposed to be here last week, but we would get together and go to the thrift store and rent some tapes, and we found a Joe Satriani tape and watched. It's just a VHS tape of Joe Satriani videos, and I made a comment that it can't be repeated on the podcast. Even I won't repeat it, but it was one of the funniest things I ever said.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just text it to me or something at a later point? Because I'm curious.
I mean, I can even
Yeah, let's you said enough there about this one, Evan. Okay.
It only reflects on me. It doesn't reflect
the video is worth watching now. So
now I want to say it. I want to say it.
Anyway, the cheeseburger rating system for Naked Gun will get into that one. Adam, do you want to do the honors, or do you want to just give a general assessment?
I just did by derailing it another 10 minutes. Mission accomplished. I'm done.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I don't have much to say. 5 deluxe cheeseburgers with all of the best toppings.
I think I started off the podcast by saying that this is the best comedy movie ever made. So I don't,
well, what's the rating?
10 cheeseburgers. See, I just changed the whole rating system. 10 cheeseburgers.
Well, I have to tell you, that's another thing that Tim does on Cinema is go like 100, and then Greg is like, it's only up to 5.
Oh, I see. I don't know that. I haven't seen all the On Cinema. In fact, this is homework that's been assigned to me for a long time now that I have to go see. But yeah, 5 fucking cheeseburgers, classic, easy, slam dunk, windmill slam, Naked Gun, top tweet. Okay.
Slam dunk reminds me that there's a sex scene in 33 1/3 where they do the classic, what I associate with Monty Python stock footage, reminiscent of sexual intercourse. And then at the very end, it ends with somebody slam dunking a basketball. It's like a train coming out, a rocket launching, and a guy slam dunking a basketball. And that was one of and Shane was trying to remember, do either of you as cinema experts, Shane was trying to think of, according to Shane, he felt like there is a famous filmmaker who would sincerely do, montage of unrelated footage to replicate sexual intercourse that he thinks is what all these things are referencing. And I was like, I don't know, man. Do either of you feel like you've seen that in a non-comedic context?
Are we talking with so we're talking about like the non, like we're talking about like in
the movie, a romantic scene happens, and then when it would be sex, it cuts to, you know, like a train going in a tunnel.
Yeah, that was the example. I think that one was like, there's a James Bond movie where that happens.
I
want to say it was like Goldfinger.
Think of the example, and I was incredulous, but I would believe that. That is the kind of movie that would do that kind of thing sincerely.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that it was Goldfinger where that happened, where, you know, they're on a train.
I'll believe that.
And that one, but yeah, I feel like that was just a common thing back in those days.
Yeah, but like you could feel that way, but I couldn't think of examples, and neither could Shane. You're right. The Goldfinger one could totally be real. In the moment of trying to come up with specific examples, neither of us could come up with any.
Yeah.
But I don't doubt it. I just want to remember the examples because it's funny.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree. That's one of my favorite things about one of my favorite visual euphemisms for intercourse that you will see.
What's your second favorite visual euphemism for intercourse?
I don't know. I've been spending so much time cataloging that my top one. I haven't thought about anything beyond that.
I forgot to mention that I watched the movie Outbreak last night. Speaking of,
I remember that being totally okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's got, like, you know, a lot of star power. Some very rich Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, Shane rewatched that recently. We got to really just get Shane on the podcast. He's not doing shit except for right now, the birthday Zoom call. Because Shane just rewatched the Outbreak a couple weeks ago, so he would have more to say. We could go another 2 hours with Shane on Outbreak.
I mean, yeah, if you want Shane, you got to really prepare yourself. I mean, we need a whole extra. Well, the good thing too is that I can mute people. I haven't had to do that to you guys. I was close to doing it a couple times during this podcast, but I can actually mute.
What were you going to mute?
I was going to mute you, you know, you and Mike for interrupting me. So, see, I can do it right now.
You know, we could do what we did in the Flintstones and just let you talk for 5 minutes. That went so well last time.
That worked really well, and I remember doing a really good job with that. There were no problems.
Yeah. I'll have to re-listen to it. I will tell you that I have since canceled my subscription to SoundCloud. So I know that there's.
Oh yeah, wait, okay, Mike. This is actual important information. It doesn't matter in this Zoom video era of the podcast, but I discovered, and I should have known all along, that there is a no-cost hosting solution for audio podcasts, which is, of course, it's what I put my radio shows on, Mixcloud. Mixcloud, there's no limit on how much you upload. There's no ads. It's just an unlimited hosting service for audio. And additionally, unlike SoundCloud or YouTube, it is not heavily policed for unlicensed clips. So if you ever resume a audio-only podcast of any form, Mixcloud is where you can upload 1 million hours without paying anything and not get things taken down for short clips from movies and songs.
Okay. That is good to know, because I think over time I spend over the years I spent like $450 on my $15 a month subscription on SoundCloud.
That's insane.
Yeah, so fortunately I've canceled that, but Mixcloud, that one would sound good to me.
So if you ever want to re-upload the old ones, just do it on Mixcloud.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have the MP4s or whatever? Where are those?
Yes, so we have those. I have those all on my hard drive, with the exception of the It podcast, which Pennywise the Clown
lost forever.
Came in and stole forever. And yes, so
we need to get that stuff.
Well,
I'd like to listen to that.
Well, I'll
say, I'm telling you, Mixcloud is super easy.
So I'm running out. So I'm down to keep on having a chat here. I'm running out of steam in terms of actual recording podcasts. So let's stop the podcast here. And I'm just gonna. I know that's this little red recording button in the corner of my screen. So let's go ahead and just stop recording it here, Evan.